Imagine this. You wake up one morning, and for the first time in your life, you feel a strange sense of clarity. The world outside looks just as it always has. Quiet streets, the early sunlight casting shadows on the sidewalk, people bustling through their routines. But something has shifted within you. It's as if a veil has lifted, and you finally see the truth. Everything you've been living for, everything you've been chasing, isn't the real purpose of your life. You feel it in your chest, like a deep sigh of relief. The weight of it is almost unbearable, this sudden recognition that you've been sleepwalking, following a script written by someone else. You've worked so hard to fit into a mold, to chase success, approval, or even just stability, and yet now, in this strange moment of awareness, you realize it has all been for nothing. You've been playing a game that wasn't even yours to play. The rules, the goals, the ideals, they were all illusions, distractions from something far deeper. The paradox here is powerful. What if the very act of living, the pursuit of all those things you were taught to want, is actually preventing you from truly living? What if the moment you stop chasing everything the world tells you is important is the moment you finally begin to live? What's worse, this awareness comes with a question that cuts deeper. How long has it been like this? How long have you been living a life that isn't yours? How much time have you wasted following the directions of a map that doesn't lead to anything meaningful? It's a haunting thought. You could spend your whole life moving towards something you think is the answer and still miss the point entirely. In the movies, there's a powerful scene in The Truman Show where Truman Burbank, having lived his entire life in a fabricated reality, suddenly starts questioning everything. His entire existence had been a show, a life controlled by unseen forces, and in that moment, he decides to break free. The tension in his chest, the realization that everything he knew was a lie, is overwhelming. But in that moment, he's also reborn. His life begins the moment he steps outside the boundaries of what was expected of him. But why do we need this kind of moment to wake up? Why do we wait until the illusions crumble before we realize they were never real in the first place? And more importantly, how do we break free from this unconscious default way of living? You may have already experienced it. The crushing feeling of waking up one day and realizing you're not living your life at all, but a life designed by society, by expectations, by the endless pursuit of things that don't matter. But there's a deeper truth hidden here, one that can set you free if you allow it. The question is, what do you do when you wake up? The truth, as unsettling as it is this. Life truly begins when you find yourself, when you stop living according to a script that's not your own. But before we can explore what that means, we need to ask another question. Why do we end up here in the first place? Why do we fall into the trap of living someone else's life, and how do we begin to reclaim our own? This is where things start to get interesting. We're going to uncover the hidden force that causes all of us to live in a way that isn't authentic and how we can break free from it. But first, we must explore the origins of this unconscious behavior and how it's shaped by the very systems that govern our world. Stay with me. What comes next will change everything. Let's pause for a moment and dive deeper. If life begins when you find yourself, why do so many of us live our lives in a haze, unaware of our true path? Why do we unknowingly drift through life, governed by external expectations and societal norms, never questioning whether they align with who we truly are? The answer lies in the intricate web of psychological conditioning and philosophical constructs that have been woven into the fabric of our existence. To understand why we live in such a disconnected state, we need to take a closer look at the roots of this problem. At the core of this issue is the powerful influence of social conditioning. From the moment we're born, society begins to shape us. We're taught what to value, what to desire, and how to behave. The institutions that shape us, our families, schools, and later our workplaces, are all deeply rooted in social expectations that aim to mold us into obedient members of society. But there's a deeper issue here. These institutions don't always nurture individuality or self-awareness. Instead, they often encourage conformity, pushing us into predefined roles without ever asking whether those roles align with our true selves. In psychological terms, this concept is closely tied to Carl Jung's idea of the false self. The false self is the mask we wear to fit in with the world around us, the persona we project to meet social expectations. This persona is not our authentic self, but a reflection of what society values: achievement, approval, success, and stability. Jung observed that living behind this false self causes immense inner conflict, as it keeps us disconnected from our true nature, the person we are deep inside. The result? We live a life dictated by external pressures, never truly knowing who we are. This sense of alienation is further deepened by the ideas of philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche warned of the dangers of societal norms and conformity, calling for a radical revaluation of values. He famously declared, "Become who you are." But what does this really mean? To Nietzsche, becoming who you truly are requires shedding the weight of societal expectations, challenging the conventional paths that others have laid before you, and discovering your own unique purpose. It's a process of self-overcoming where you must confront the discomfort of stepping away from the collective identity and begin to create your own. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche speaks of the last man, a symbol of the individual who conforms to society's comforts and becomes complacent in his own mediocrity. This last man seeks comfort and approval, never questioning the norms he follows. Nietzsche warns that living in this way, clinging to societal validation, is a recipe for existential death. You will be alive, but never fully awake. Moreover, the modern world compounds this issue with its emphasis on consumerism and external markers of success. We are constantly bombarded by advertisements, social media influencers, and cultural messages that tell us what we need to be happy, successful, and fulfilled. These external forces tell us that we must have the perfect job, the perfect body, the perfect relationships, otherwise we're failing. But in truth, these external markers are empty. They distract us from the most important question of all. Who am I? And what do I truly want? The answer lies not in these distractions, but in a process of introspection and self-discovery. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian neurologist and Holocaust survivor, touched on this in his book Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl argued that meaning in life doesn't come from external achievements or material success, but from finding purpose and meaning in one's own existence. Frankl's experiences in the concentration camps taught him that those who found meaning, even in the most horrendous conditions, were the ones who survived and thrived. He famously said, "The meaning of life is to give life meaning." So here's the question. What if, in our constant pursuit of external validation, we've forgotten to ask the most fundamental question of all? What do I truly want, and who am I really? The tension is building, and the answer is coming. But before we get there, it's time to look at the unseen consequences of living a life that is shaped by these external forces. What happens when we fail to confront the deeper questions? What are the costs of living a life dictated by someone else's definition of success? Stay with me. The answers are just ahead. Now that we've explored why we tend to live according to societal expectations and external pressures, let's take a closer look at the unseen consequences of this way of living. What happens when we allow these external forces to dictate who we are? What are the emotional, psychological, and even societal costs of failing to find and live by our true selves? The first and most immediate consequence is a deep sense of alienation. This isn't just the feeling of being alone, it's a profound disconnection from our own identity. When we live inauthentically, we lose touch with our own desires, our needs, and even our values. We become like actors, playing a role for an audience that isn't even real. We wear a mask so convincingly that we begin to believe it's who we are. But deep down, we can feel that something isn't right. We might have all the outward markers of success, career, relationships, material wealth. But if we're not aligned with our true selves, there's a quiet, nagging emptiness that never seems to go away. This emptiness is something many of the greatest minds in history have grappled with. Arthur Schopenhauer, for example, spoke of the will to live, a force that drives all human behavior, yet is ultimately unsatisfying. According to Schopenhauer, humans are trapped in an endless cycle of desire, always chasing something new, never fully satisfied with what we have. This constant striving for something we think we need is often rooted in external validation, not in internal fulfillment. Schopenhauer's view was bleak. He believed that suffering was an inherent part of the human condition. Yet, his insight into the emptiness that comes from living without true meaning is a key element of our current predicament. In the myth of Sisyphus, Albert Camus explored a similar theme, presenting the image of Sisyphus, condemned to push a boulder up a mountain only for it to roll back down each time. Camus saw this as a metaphor for the absurdity of human existence. We are constantly striving, climbing the metaphorical mountain, yet the rewards seem just out of reach. He argued that the answer lies not in avoiding the struggle, but in embracing it with awareness, recognizing that the struggle itself can become a source of meaning if we choose to find it. This is the crucial moment. The realization that true meaning doesn't come from the external world, but from how we approach it. Yet, despite this awareness, most people continue to play the game. They follow the rules. They climb the mountain. They seek external validation, not because they truly want those things, but because they've been conditioned to believe they should. The results? Chronic anxiety, depression, and a general sense of dissatisfaction. According to the World Health Organization, depression is now one of the leading causes of disability worldwide. And what is depression, if not the internal consequence of a life lived out of alignment with one's true self? The issue of societal expectations and self-alienation has another profound impact. It leaves us powerless in the face of life's challenges. When we live by someone else's definition of success, we don't have the inner resources to face adversity. We don't know how to cope when the inevitable difficulties of life arise. We are too accustomed to relying on external validation to feel good about ourselves. As soon as that external source is threatened, whether it's a job loss, a breakup, or any other crisis, we crumble. Jean-Paul Sartre, one of the leading figures in existential philosophy, argued that our lack of authenticity leads us to live in bad faith. This is when we deceive ourselves into thinking that we have no control over our lives, that we must conform to society's rules, and that we are mere products of our circumstances. Sartre believed that to be truly free, we must recognize that we are the authors of our own lives. We have the ability and the responsibility to define ourselves. But living in bad faith, living according to a narrative that isn't our own, leaves us paralyzed. We lose our agency. We stop making conscious choices, instead letting life happen to us, rather than actively shaping our lives according to our authentic desires. So, the question becomes even more pressing. What is the cost of this inauthentic existence? The costs are significant. They manifest in mental health struggles, in relationships that feel shallow or disconnected, in careers that drain rather than fulfill us. They show up in our inability to find true satisfaction, even when we've achieved everything we were told we needed. This is the silent consequence of a life lived according to someone else's script. But what if there was a way to escape this cycle, to finally step off the treadmill of expectations and reclaim the life that is rightfully yours? The breakthrough is coming, and it's about to be revealed. But before we reach that moment of realization, let's take a closer look at how we can break free from this cycle of self-deception and reclaim our personal power. Stay with me. The answers are just ahead. Now that we've understood the hidden costs of living a life shaped by external expectations, the next question becomes, how do we break free from this cycle? How do we reclaim our true selves and begin to live authentically, in alignment with our deepest desires and values? The answer lies in a radical shift in perspective, a rebellion against the norms that have kept us trapped for so long. To begin, we must first recognize that the greatest obstacle to freedom is the fear of stepping outside the lines. The fear of disapproval, of failure, of being judged is what keeps us in the cage of social conformity. But here's the profound truth. Freedom only exists when we embrace the unknown, when we choose to live in accordance with our own values rather than the preordained paths laid out for us by society. This rebellion isn't loud or dramatic. It's an internal revolution, a commitment to live authentically, regardless of the consequences. Think back to the iconic stories of those who broke free from societal constraints and chose their own paths. Take the example of Leonardo da Vinci, the quintessential Renaissance man who transcended the limits of his time. Da Vinci's genius wasn't just in his art or science, but in his refusal to conform to any one discipline. He wasn't satisfied with the prescribed paths. Instead, he charted his own course, seamlessly blending art, anatomy, engineering, and innovation. His life was a testament to the power of breaking free from conventional expectations and pursuing what deeply resonated with him. This is the essence of rebellion, the courage to choose your own path, regardless of the pressure to conform. But it's not as simple as just doing what you feel. Reclaiming your true self requires confronting the discomfort of uncertainty, the anxiety that arises when you begin to let go of the false self. As Carl Jung wrote, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But this journey isn't easy. To truly become who you are, you must first shed the layers of fear, doubt, and societal conditioning that have been placed upon you. In order to break free, the first step is to embrace discomfort. This may seem counterintuitive. We're taught from a young age to avoid discomfort at all costs, to seek comfort, safety, and predictability. But the truth is, growth happens in discomfort. It's only when we challenge the norms, when we push against the boundaries of what is expected, that we can begin to discover who we truly are. Take, for example, the story of Maya Angelou, one of the most revered poets and writers of our time. Angelou experienced profound struggles in her early life, including trauma and abuse. Yet she found the courage to rise above those circumstances and express her truth through her writing. She once said, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." Her rebellion against the circumstances that sought to define her was not about fighting the world, but about confronting her own fears and embracing her voice. She chose to live authentically, to face the discomfort of her past and transform it into something powerful. This is the essence of breaking free, choosing to live authentically, even when it means embracing the discomfort of uncertainty and stepping into the unknown. It's about rejecting the societal definition of success and instead creating your own. It's about embracing the unknown future and trusting that the journey toward your true self is worth any difficulty that may arise along the way. But how do you actually begin this rebellion? It starts with a conscious decision to step away from the noise of the world, the constant distractions, the voices that tell you who to be and how to live. It starts with self-awareness, taking the time to reflect on what truly matters to you, rather than what others say should matter. This isn't about rejecting all that society offers, but about reclaiming your personal autonomy, your ability to choose your own path. Once you embrace this rebellion, you'll begin to see the world differently. The pressure to conform lessens, and you start to realize that you are the one who has the power to shape your life. You don't need anyone else's approval. You don't need to live by the rules of others. Instead, you choose the rules that align with your authentic self. And in doing so, you not only break free from the prison of societal expectations, but you also unlock the immense potential that has always been inside of you. This shift is the beginning of your true journey. But before you can fully embrace the power of self-authorship, there's one more crucial revelation that will transform the way you view your life. The ultimate realization, one that will change everything, is just ahead. Stay with me. The truth is coming, and it will finally set you free. Now, you've taken the first steps in your rebellion, breaking free from societal expectations, embracing the discomfort of uncertainty, and beginning to choose a path that is truly your own. But here's where it gets even more profound. The ultimate realization that will completely transform how you see yourself and the world around you. It's simple, yet it carries the weight of everything you've been through. Life begins when you stop trying to be someone else. This is the moment that redefines everything. It's a realization so powerful that it reframes your entire existence. All the time you spent conforming to expectations, chasing success and approval, these were all distractions from the real journey. The real journey begins when you stop looking outside of yourself for validation and start looking inward, when you stop comparing yourself to others and begin to embrace the uniqueness that lies within you. The moment you accept this truth, everything changes. You stop trying to be who society wants you to be, and you start becoming who you were always meant to be. There is a freedom that comes with this realization, one that cannot be bought or earned. It's the freedom to live without fear of judgment, without the burden of conforming to a prescribed mold. At that moment, you can breathe deeply for the first time. This concept isn't new. Throughout history, many have realized this truth in their own way. Think of the Buddha, who after years of searching for external truths, realized that the key to liberation lay within himself. He rejected the endless pursuit of wealth, power, and social status, and found peace in self-awareness and understanding. His journey was not about gaining something external. It was about shedding everything that wasn't his true self. It's also reflected in the teachings of existential philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre, who insisted that we are condemned to be free. For Sartre, freedom wasn't something to be taken lightly. It was the responsibility to create oneself through actions and choices. The existential struggle is not about finding some higher meaning imposed from the outside, but about acknowledging that the meaning of life comes from within, through how we choose to live authentically. But what does this mean for you in your everyday life? How can you apply this realization? It starts with a shift in perspective. You must stop seeking approval from others, stop comparing your life to the carefully curated images you see on social media. Stop measuring your worth by how others perceive you. These external markers of success and validation will never bring lasting fulfillment. The truth is, the more you seek external validation, the further away you move from yourself. Take a moment to reflect. How much of your life has been spent trying to be someone you're not? How often have you looked to others to define who you are, only to find yourself feeling more lost, more disconnected, and more exhausted? What if, instead of seeking approval, you simply chose to accept yourself as you are, flaws and all? The ultimate freedom comes from the recognition that you are enough, just as you are. You don't need to meet anyone's standards but your own. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Once you understand this, you stop living for others and begin living for yourself. And in doing so, you unlock your greatest potential. This is the essence of true empowerment. The only validation you need is your own. This realization brings a profound sense of peace because you're no longer fighting against yourself or the world. You are simply being. And in being, you find that life becomes infinitely more meaningful. The pressure to live up to external expectations evaporates, and you can begin to enjoy the simple, beautiful act of living authentically. But the shift doesn't end there. With this newfound freedom comes an even deeper understanding. You are the creator of your own reality. When you live authentically, you align with your true desires and values, and the world begins to reflect that alignment. The people, opportunities, and experiences you encounter are no longer coincidental. They are a reflection of your internal state, the energy you project. This is the key to unlocking the life you've always dreamed of. It's not about striving for more. It's about recognizing that everything you need is already within you. The life you've been searching for isn't somewhere outside of you, but right here, waiting to be claimed by the most powerful version of yourself. In this final realization, you begin to see life not as a series of challenges to overcome or goals to attain, but as an unfolding journey of self-discovery. With each choice, each action, you move closer to the person you were always meant to be. And in doing so, life itself becomes an art, an expression of your soul, painted with the colors of your own authenticity. As you embrace this new reality, you will find that everything you've experienced, the struggles, the moments of doubt, the fear of breaking free, becomes part of a larger, beautiful tapestry. And when you finally see it for what it is, you realize this. Life begins when you stop pretending to be someone else and start embracing the person you were always meant to be. So now, ask yourself, who are you, truly? Not who others want you to be, not who you've been conditioned to be, but who you are at your core. That is where life begins. And from that place, everything else will follow. This is the ultimate truth. The moment you find yourself is the moment life begins anew.